Here. Okay. So here we have the new progressive voice. Very similar names, which is very interesting. But we're going to break down some topics and have a little conversation for you guys to watch. Obviously, if you guys haven't checked out his channel, I'm sure you have already, because I'm sure most of my viewers already know. But if not, go subscribe to him. I'll leave the link down below. And we have a list here of topics to get through. And just how's it going, man?
Doing good.
That's good
Doing
to hear,
good.
man. So, with this whole election, there's been a lot of talk about burn or bust and whether or not we really should have gone about it the way that, well, not necessarily going about it, but how people felt and the sentiment of burn or bust. What are your thoughts on
Mhm.
that in general?
I think this was necessary. It was inevitable, but that the Democratic Party would implode because essentially they lost their identity and they no longer were substantive from the inside. So it just made sense that they would rot from the inside. They would implode. So if it wasn't this election season, inevitably it would have happened.
So, would you say that having Hillary Clinton would have been a better situation or a better choice than Donald Trump?
I think initially it may have seemed that way, but invariably we just would have gone into malaise and just a continuation of the same agenda, war. Of course, she'd mentioned many times on our campaign trail that single payer healthcare was unrealistic. So that
Mm-hmm.
would have gotten nowhere. She was willing to make compromises even on education being fully funded.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really would have been her kowtowing to, I think, mainly the Republicans, trying to please them, make bridges, third way process, continuing the legacy of her husband, pretty much.
Right. So, obviously there are a lot of downsides, like a ton of downsides, and that's why we supported Bernie Sanders over her in the
Mhm.
primary. But like I think you would agree that there are certain things that she's better on. So, for example, the Supreme Court justice. I'm sure she wouldn't pick a Republican,
Mhm.
and also with the EPA and the climate change. And then
Mhm.
I guess you could also make the case that she wouldn't make this executive order for the ban on 7 countries of people immigrating from there. So, do you
Yeah.
think that it was worth it to hold out
Mm.
in order, because we're taking a lot of hits. It's almost like every day there's
Mhm.
something ridiculous going on. So
Right.
we
Right.
just had the Supreme Court nominee, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Right. Very loaded question. Okay. So first off, I think that if Hillary Clinton, well, let's start with the justice.
Hmm.
You have to remember right now we have 4 and 4 justices pretty
Right.
much. It's in the middle.
Hmm.
And this new guy coming in, he's just going to replace Scalia.
Yeah.
So really we'll have pretty much the same makeup you had under Obama. The
Yeah.
difference, of course, is you have Trump and the domination of the House and the Senate. That's what really ultimately matters in my book. Um, as far as the justices, again, you have the same complexion, so no change there.
Hmm.
Um, Now, getting to the thing you had mentioned about, well, some of the things that Hillary might have done, we already talked about that part of it.
Hmm.
What else did you say? Something about was it worth it?
Yeah.
I think I think so because the other thing this is going to do, it's going to wake up a lot of people that may not have been
See,
voting.
right, and that was a common rhetoric and things that we heard from someone like Jimmy Dore, and I thought it was going to be true too. But now, like we look at it, and
Mhm.
I feel like there's still so many people who are making Bernie as the enemy, and there's still like diehard Hillary supporters. So I
Right.
and the Democrats in Congress are extremely weak. Like some of them, like Tim
Yeah.
Kaine, have voted against maybe one of his cabinet picks or something
Right.
of that nature.
Yeah,
So
I think you're right to a certain extent. We're going through an identity crisis, but if you take a look and pay attention, you also see that Bernie Sanders is in a much more dominant position than he was prior. And
hmm.
you also have Keith Ellison, which a lot of people have complaints about him, but he certainly is a lot more progressive than Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So we made some
Yeah.
progress in that department.
Hmm.
So this is going to be incremental. It's not going to be everybody's not going to be satisfied, and I think ultimately, hopefully Clinton doesn't come back into the picture, we're going to, if she doesn't come back in the picture, I think it's ultimately going to serve us. If she comes back into the picture, yeah, it's going to be hard to predict.
And speaking of Keith Ellison, a lot of people actually have a lot of problems with Keith on
Mhm.
his foreign policy because he's actually very hawkish,
Right.
and he's had some other things that are like he put out an article that was entitled something like if you are against Hillary, you're going in
Right.
line with the Republicans' 20-year propaganda or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? Do you start to get like, oh, because when I first heard about Keith Ellison, because I didn't know him
Mhm.
until Bernie Sanders endorsed him.
Right.
So now that this stuff is all coming out, we're starting to realize it. Are you kind of feeling a little
Hmm.
uncomfortable with him or
Well,
something like that?
I'm a little different than a lot of people in that I have a bigger. I tend to look at myself as having a more long-term uh, perspective on where we're going,
Hmm.
because I know a lot of people want to say, let's pull out of Syria, let's close all the bases, let's come back to the States. But this isn't something that's going to happen overnight, and nor is it safe to just simply do that. So I'm okay with working with him and continuing to pressure him. Now, how is he different from Hillary? Um, I think we're gathering steam and we're gathering a force. And I think invariably you're going to find it's a matter of time. We have to come home. You know, we have to get out of Syria. We have to get back to the States
Yeah.
and no longer be policing the world. But this isn't something that we need to pin on the back of one person, because unfortunately, the majority of the Democratic Party right now is not identified in that way. My point here is I think we need to line up with 3 to 5 major core things we want to accomplish.
Hmm.
The war needs to be more long-term perspective, because this isn't going to go away, because it's much bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
And we can complain about it, but we don't have access to the CIA or the intelligence briefings. We don't know why they're there. We can make all these conspiracy theories about why they're there. It's ultimately about changing our perspective and our mindset and our policies. And we've got to get uh, our those that represent us to eventually get us there. So
Oh,
I'm not as bottom line here is I'm not as we've got to pick the most progressive candidate, and right now he is the most progressive one.
yeah. I just wanted to. I was wondering if you, because there's actually a DNC chair debate like there would be for any other position, or like a
Mhm.
presidential debate, and the moderator asked if any of them thought that the DNC had rigged the election against Bernie
Mhm.
Sanders, and no one raised their hand. I'm not sure if you saw that. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that actually.
Does
That's
that
why I
concern you a little bit? I mean, he did endorse him, which is awesome because at the time it was really, really rare to see someone of decent stature to actually come out and endorse him. But
now this is what I'm saying in terms of long term.
mhm,
If we're going to try to make someone be elected president other than the Democratic Party by 2020,
mhm,
99% that's not going to happen.
mhm,
We're just not organized. Right now, we're in disarray. We have an identity crisis. So the best thing we can do right now is focus on congressional candidates and
mhm,
get grassroots up and get the majority of the Senate and the Congress be progressive candidates, whether that's Green Party, whether that's Justice Democrats, whatever complexion. And then eventually, when we are tested through time and we know exactly where we're going, then we can start thinking about, okay, this is who we're going to get in for president. Now, that's not to say that I'm telling you that we absolutely cannot get a president in at 2020.
mhm.
I'll never say never, but right now I think we're so much in disarray that's not very likely at this point.
And on the topic of the Green Party, where do you see, especially with like because there are different groups, not just the Justice Democrats, but there's also other
Mhm.
groups that are trying to like I'll see articles where it's like, oh, this group is trying or Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders might even have his own movement or organization. Yeah.
Mhm.
So now, what do you see as the future of the Green Party? Is my question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's going to have to be some kind of mending within the party. I think right now you have two strong parts of the party. You have Jill Stein and David Cobbs.
Hmm.
And David Cobbs has a very strong hold with the Jill Stein campaign. And
Yeah.
then you have the Green Party, which are very split over what happened with the recount in the
Yeah.
Midwest. And until they can come to terms with what happened there, and get together again, I don't think they're going to go very far. And also, I personally believe they need to better in getting out there and being more transparent. It's extremely difficult. There's almost like a firewall between everybody and the Green Party. It's hard to get in. So I've tried, I've looked at their websites, and even the management to me seems obscure. They need to get on social media. They need to start extending themselves beyond their little encapsulation. And until they do that, I don't think they're going to go very far. And I hate to say it, but it's just my personal experience. I don't know, what kind of experience have you had?
Yeah, for the Green Party, like I always support third party voting, and I think that they definitely have the probably the best platform, like hands down.
Mm,
But I've always felt like if you're going to be part of the Green Party, you are, instead of uh, being someone who's going to enter whatever position you're trying to enter and then have those beliefs that you want to put in place, you're kind
mhm.
of just you're handicapping yourself because it's so hard to win in the Green Party.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it realistic? Like, let's say, for example, you wanted to run for maybe like a representative position and you
Well,
totally
this is
align
the
with the Green Party instead of the Democratic Party, would you run as a Green Party member instead, or would you run as a Democrat because obviously you have a way higher chance to win? If Bernie ran as an independent, we probably wouldn't even know who he is, and no, I'm not going to go that far, but he wouldn't have gotten nearly as many votes.
Well, here's where I think we make a big mistake on the left, and that is that we're so identified with, should we go green or should we go Democrat?
Hmm.
What the right has correct is they elected Donald Trump, and they weren't so much about, oh, I have to vote Republican, or what if my candidate doesn't win because he's not really a Republican per se. They were more about their principles. And that's where I think that if we can just, but see, what you have is the older generation. Social media works really well for Green Party, the
Uh-huh.
younger generation. They're like, okay, give me something I want to hear and give me a reason to vote for you. But the older generation, they're plugged into mainstream media. So it's
Right.
really hard for them. And they have such a massive influence on the left side, and they're so hooked into the Democratic Party. So,
Right.
yes, in that sense, you're right. Going for the Green Party would be a handicap. But ultimately, if we can make a loud enough noise, and it always starts with the younger generation.
Uh-huh.
And if the younger generation is split up, then it's going to end up being the Democrat candidate. If the younger generation has a coalition that's adhesive,
Uh-huh.
then we can vocalize that and be visible enough whereby the older generation that's plugged into mainstream media feels threatened, and they have to report us and they hear about us, and then we win them over. Otherwise, you're right. Green Party probably wouldn't work.
So the final question on that specific topic is going to be, do you think it would be realistic? And I totally support third party voting, but do you think that it would be realistic for a Green Party candidate to win a presidency?
Mhm. I think again, it just depends on how much cohesion exists within the younger generation. Those say below the age of 50, 18 to 50, that group has got to decide what it wants and put its weight behind that. That's what I'd like to see, rather than that generation of people identifying with the Democratic Party or the Democratic Justice or the Progressive Independent Party or the Socialist Party or the Green Party. As long as we have that kind of mindset, we're going to be fractured and we're not going to go anywhere. But if we look instead of what are the core values that we all share and get behind that, then we can break the wall between this younger generation and the older generation and get them to start supporting us. Then
Okay.
in that case, yes. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, you kind of did. I can kind of tell what you're trying to get at. So jumping off of the Green Party to now more to focus a little bit more on the Democratic Party. First of all, do you think that Bernie Sanders will run or be able to run in 2020? Because given
Mhm.
his old age, he's what, 74, but
Mhm.
he seems to be, to me, in better shape than someone like Trump or Clinton.
Right,
So,
right, right.
do you think that he'll be able to run again?
I think he can run again. I don't see any reason. He hasn't shown any reasons. His health is not there at this point. And you have to remember, Nelson Mandela ran at the age of 78,
Hmm.
and he won for the
Yeah,
first
no
time.
doubt.
So,
Okay. If let's say for whatever reason Bernie Sanders doesn't run, he's I don't know, mental or not mentally, physically health barred,
mhm,
or he's just too humble or something like that.
mhm.
Who would you want to be the Democratic nominee?
Well, my initial reaction would be Tulsi Gabbard, but
Hmm.
I know that she's relatively young and she's a representative, so her experience being a senator is limited. But that would be my initial reaction. Beyond that, maybe Nina Turner, I believe is her name.
Hmm.
Um, those are the only two that I can think of at this point. How about yourself?
So yeah, I would agree on that front. There's also I think Alan Grayson who's in the House of
Mm,
Representatives who I'd like too, and I think he's very witty. There was this one thing I want to ask you a quick question on because for Tulsi Gabbard, there are, and I'm not trying to do a smear here. I just want to ask the question because I'm genuinely interested. Because when I saw her at the time when she dipped out of the DNC and
mhm.
then to give her endorsement for Bernie Sanders, I thought it was great, right?
Right.
But I felt like everyone all of a sudden made her some kind of saint too quickly.
Mm,
And I saw this Alternet article, which is a progressive site. It's a progressive source. So you would assume that it would be pro. I'm not sure exactly what the criticisms were, but it was something to do with, it had to do with Islam, I believe, and something of that sort. Um, do you feel at all skeptical in any way? Because there was something else
the
recently
left,
that I forgot. I forgot what I was going to
I
say.
don't because I feel the left has too many period tests right now, and it's just going to destroy us. We have got to stop being so perfectionistic and start identifying our core values, and that's where I think Justice Democrat gets it right. Is they've listed some of the things that are important.
Hmm.
What we had to add to that is election reform, which I think that's was lacking on that platform.
Hmm.
Because without that, what does it matter? But that shouldn't stop us from moving forward and still getting out to vote
Right.
because even the voting system is better than not voting at all. Um, so I'm not as these things don't matter because you have to remember this is all about politics. So you have to be careful what you trust.
Hmm.
Even people that can infiltrate into the progressive side and pretend they're just a plant. They write these articles because they want to undermine people, and you can't really tell. There's so much fake news and alternative news out there today. Who do who do you trust?
Yeah.
Mainstream media, and even going alternative news. Don't know if they're a plant. So it has to come down to us picking those core values and getting behind it. And that's why I like the Justice Democrats. At this point, that's where I'm putting my weight. Unless the Green Party and Jill Stein or someone else can show me why they're going to reinvent the wheel and do something different than what they did in this past election.
Right. So, speaking of the Justice Democrats, how do you feel about the Justice Democrats and what they're trying to do?
I like their platform. I'm a little suspicious about TYT being part of that apparatus,
Hmm.
but at this point, it's like think of it as if you were in war and you had maybe someone that was on your team and they were a little weak and they did something that wasn't so good, but you still know who your real enemy is.
Hmm.
And that other person says, well, let's try something else. And I'm willing to go over to your side and let's work it out. Who are you going to trust? You're going to trust your enemy or you're going to trust that person? I don't know. But what do you have to work with? That's all you have to work with.
Hmm.
So it's either going to be we go all the way all out and decide to get out of the Democratic Party. But the problem, as I pointed out earlier, if you do that, you're going to split the older generation from the younger generation, and that's going to split the left. And the only way that's going to work is if everybody has a resounding 100% strong voice where it convinces the older generation why they should come over and join you. into whatever the Green Party, Progressive Party, whatever. But for
So
right now, the best we
okay,
have is the Democratic Party.
right. So a lot of people were a little maybe disappointed. I'll use this. Uh, a lot of people were disappointed because they thought that it was going to be a whole separate party, and they were like, "We're going to get a fresh start and all this." But um, what would you say to that to people who are disappointed and then like, it's the same stuff, or at the very least, just disappointed with them, not as energetic as they would have been if it was a separate party?
I think the time for a separate party is not yet because people are still going through an identity crisis and not everybody's agreeing and they're splitting hairs. I think that we need to work on those progressive parties. I myself am writing up a platform and stuff for a progressive party. I don't know if I'll ever put it out there, but at least I'm starting on it. And I know
Mm-hmm.
there's other forums like Progressive Independence and other parties like that.
Yeah.
If you can get out there and show us why we should support you, then great. But for right now, the best thing we have is the Justice Democrats. So you can complain, but it's not going to get you anywhere. You've got to get out there and show us your platform. Make yourself visible. Make yourself accessible.
So, there is to that point where you're bringing up that it is really our only option. Are you familiar with the Sane Progressive on YouTube?
Yes. Hmm.
So I don't know if you know about this, but she had made two videos, one backing up the other, basically destroying and just absolutely demolishing or trying to belittle Justice Democrats, as well as honestly, she kind of went at Bernie Sanders too, because a lot of the criticism there was about Bernie Sanders. Are you familiar with these videos at all?
Yeah, yeah. I watched that particular video you're
And
referring to.
so she brought up problems, and she was saying that Bernie Sanders didn't talk about the voter fraud real time, and she seemed to really hold a grudge for that. And she was just absolutely going at it, saying that his campaign was a total fail, which I think many people disagree with, including me. And she also brought up some points that uh, it's very fishy to her because afterwards she messaged me and she said that one of the co-founders, and she didn't make a video on this yet apparently, is that one of the co-founders of Justice Democrats is somehow linked to George Soros.
Oh, okay.
So, um, how do you feel, generally speaking, about her criticisms and what she was saying? Do you agree with her? Because she's saying that, she's so angry, she's probably going to change her name from progressive to something else. And she doesn't even want to be called a progressive anymore. So,
Hmm.
I mean, the polarization is unreal to me.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Right, right. I think she brings up a lot of good points, and I don't blame her for voicing those points. And I'm glad that she's out there, being a very strong voice
Mm-hmm.
for things that really were ignored. And I personally agree with her. Bernie Sanders didn't do anything about it, didn't say anything about it. And I think it was a
Mm-hmm.
failing on his behalf.
Yeah.
Um, I don't at all blame her for feeling the way she does and expressing that. And I'm glad she's out there expressing it. But at the same time, tell me what you're going to do about it. I know that she's worked on the field and she's an activist and she's confronted Bernie Sanders personally. So that I'm not suggesting she hasn't done anything, but it's one thing to bring up a complaint. It's another thing to say, okay, what is our plan of action here? Um, at least with Kyle, he put it out there. He's got a plan of action. We have a map. We have a way to get there. Um, and I'm not opposed to someone else coming along and show me a better plan. I just haven't seen it. I mean, I like
Right.
the Green Party, but right now I feel
Right.
like they're
Right.
fractured and there's like a firewall. I can't get to them. They're in their own little bubble. The Green Network and David Cobb, and they want to do it. Carry everything on their shoulders. And I've been vouching for them since the beginning of my channel. So
Right, and she didn't really mention anything about the Green Party, so that makes me wonder as well. But I think what her supposed alternative is she's gonna make a platform and she's gonna start like maybe a whole new party or some sort of that. So
And I think a lot of people have been thinking of that, and I think that's great. Let everybody create these parties, and we're going to need ranked choice voting. Otherwise, we'll have Republicans for the next 100 years.
right, um, so on that, also, I wanted to bring something up because would you say you are aligned with because the Justice Democrats are still within the Democratic Party, right?
Mhm.
And then who did you vote for in the election, if you don't mind saying?
Jill
Jill
Stein.
Stein. So would you align yourself with the Justice Democrats and the Democrats, or the Green Party and whatever else
Um,
you would call yourself? I guess a
right now, I
progressive.
would say that I still probably would be supporting Jill Stein.
Mm-hmm.
If it were Bernie Sanders, I'd probably support him over Jill Stein, mainly because I think obviously that's a lot more well organized, a lot more visible. Furthermore, Jill Stein even endorsed him in a way by saying, you be president, I'll be vice president. So that says a lot right
Oh,
there.
that actually brings up another really good question I have. And this is what I call the burning question. Because this was brought up by some people, is that maybe this is because of the massive, massive unfavorables. I mean, this is probably one of the only times in history where I believe both of them have unfavorable ratings, where their disapproval is higher than their approval. So a lot of people are saying because they both have massive disapproval ratings, this may be the first time that a third party candidate can actually steal this election, because Bernie Sanders has like a 60 something approval rating, and that's like unseen. So, uh, do you think that he would have been able to do that? And specifically knowing that she would have lost, somehow knowing that, do you think that he should have ran?
Are you saying should have broken away from the Democratic Party and
And
run independent?
in the general,
In,
ran independent?
oh, I see.
Or,
Independent.
in the Green Party. Either one works, because technically
Mhm.
they're both, very far off and very different.
I think what you would have found in that instance is that we still would have lost. But I also think that we would be much further along in terms of third party um, agenda. A reason I say that is, again, the younger generation is stuck in their, social media bubble. The older generation, which is at least as big as the younger generation in terms of population and
Right.
vote. In fact, they tend to vote more. They're not going to go over to Bernie Sanders. Most of them wouldn't have gone over to Bernie Sanders, and I think it would have just split the Democrats up. But at the same time, I wonder if it
Right.
would have put a wet blanket, on Trump, because then I think Bernie Sanders would have sucked a lot of
Because
votes for
yeah,
him.
keep in mind that a lot of Democratic primary caucuses and the primaries were closed primaries, so independents couldn't even
Right.
vote,
Right.
and he was massively popular among
You know what?
independents.
I mean, I don't underestimate Bernie Sanders because you're right. I mean, look where he started and by the time he finished, he went up against a juggernaut. Clintons were the
Right.
most
And
powerful, group in the planet.
Bernie Sanders' life is very interesting. I've read about him, and I mean the
Hmm.
guy was
Well,
just
so I'm not going to make that. I just back up the train and say not an absolute, but I think the odds we probably would have still lost, but there again,
right.
there's maybe that 40% chance
And
of it.
also on that, so like I was reading through some of the comments of Saint Progressive's videos,
Mhm.
and a lot of people, and I would almost say a majority of them, were absolutely just chastising Bernie Sanders for endorsing Hillary Clinton. So would you say that you would have rather had him not endorse Hillary Clinton, and did it make you lose any respect for him in any way?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, when I initially heard that he was going to endorse Hillary Clinton, I had to do a lot of apologetic self-analysis, apologizing for Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
It was a disappointment, quite frankly, but I also wonder if he had not endorsed Hillary Clinton and he went on to get the delegate count,
Mm-hmm.
how much of Hillary supporters would have come over to him?
Mm-hmm.
So it might have been a calculation on his behalf, and also him just being a gentleman as he naturally is, and it's not really his domain. He's not an attorney, and it maybe he's allowing the people to decide to, I don't know. Ultimately, yes, I was disappointed, but I can rationalize it. I can understand why he did what he did, and maybe it might have served him if he had won the delegate count, he might have brought over a lot of Hillary supporters as a result of doing that.
So we know that Bernie Sanders did a great job during his campaign, in perspective to what his position was, right? Because
Right.
the Clinton machine is a tough thing to beat because it's name recognition.
Yeah.
But what do you think differently should have happened for him to win? To
That's a
have
good
actually
question.
won the primary? Because we talk about he got over 40% of the vote, and I think like 24 states or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was just wondering what you think what he
Well,
would have had to do.
I'm gonna two. There's two parts of me. The one part that wants to go with there's nothing he could have done to win, which is that the fact is it was rigged,
Hmm.
and it wouldn't matter how many votes he would have ended up getting, he still would have lost. But that's a very, depressing way of seeing things, and hopefully it's not that way of setup. It's not set up that way. The other part of me says, okay, if I'm going to suspend my conspiracy theory side and say, no, he just didn't get enough votes, in that instance, I'm thinking what he could have done. Yeah, there's just a media blackout. It's really hard to know. I think he did nearly everything he could. He showed up in all the right places. He said all the right things. Um, what do
Okay,
you
so
think?
let me hear. Okay, I'll give you my opinion and also kind of pose a question to you as well because here's my main analysis from his campaign. And first of all, I just like to say that I think it was Michigan that was the biggest poll mishap ever that he ended up winning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a debate the night before the primary. So I think that the media blackout was massively against him and voter fraud and just blocking out independents and just turning everyone away possible. DNC literally leaking out questions before the town halls and just the different things that they had and literally controlling the pundits. I mean, we saw it from the DNC leaks. They were, I don't know if it was Chuck Todd or Jake Tapper, one of them. They're just basically controlling what he was saying.
Yeah.
So that was the main thing. But here's an interesting stat that I'm not sure if you've thought about. Bernie Sanders got his clock cleaned in the South. He won 0 states in the South, not
Right.
a single one. You know what states came first in the election cycle? The South states. It was Iowa, it was New Hampshire, and then all the South states, and then throw in some other states, of course. But he didn't win a
Mm.
single one in every South state. Pretty much, he got like destroyed. So, and he also started his campaign a little bit late because I
Yeah.
don't think he really took it as seriously. He didn't think it was going to get as far as it did.
Yeah.
But do you like because I don't know how he would have appealed better to African Americans because I think they were just going based off of because okay, and also the South states, like I'll just give you a stat, like I think it was 62% of Democratic primary voters were African American, so that is the main demographic. uh
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how he could have appealed more because I think a lot of them have this irrational belief that Clinton, like Bill Clinton, was somehow their friend, even though they had the 3 strikes rule and all
Mm-hmm.
that, blowing up the jail system.
Right.
But I don't know what he could have done because, for example, he actually marched with Martin Luther King Jr. and
Mm-hmm.
Hillary Clinton, as you probably know, she was a Goldwater girl who didn't support Civil Rights Act. So I mean, do you think there was a way that he could have won the South states? Because just think about it. If he had won, if he had even split the South states, I think he would have won if he had split the
Yeah.
South states.
Well, again, that would not have made a difference had he won California
Hmm.
and a few other Western states that he didn't
Um,
pick up.
right. I think I would agree to that to a certain extent, but you gotta remember the delegate is proportional. So, for example,
Yeah.
he won
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, but he still net lost. He still net lost delegates on that day because
Mm-hmm.
he got his clock cleaned in somewhere. I forget where it was. It was like Mississippi or Alabama or something like that, and there's some other state. But in most of the states he won were, um, I guess you'd say progressive
Okay,
white
I
states.
think now that I'm thinking about it, uh, I hate to say this, but I don't think he went after Clinton enough. He excused her and I think Trump was right when he said that when he said, "We're tired of hearing about your damn emails,"
Hmm.
that was a turning point for him. It was not so much a turning point for him, but more a turning point for Clinton, and that allowed her to kind of put it in the bag. I think if he had gone after her more, then there was an opportunity for him to maybe take it. But he's such a polite guy, and he doesn't want to ruffle any feathers, and But you think about that, you have to have someone that can shoot from the hip and tell it like it is and isn't worried about hurting feelings. And that's where the political correctness, I think, destroys the left.
Okay, okay. So
Social justice warriors and all that stuff. So
right. And do you the whole Bernie bro thing? What are your thoughts on that whole thing? The whole idea that people voted Bernie because they're sexist.
that's absolutely ridiculous. That's
Right.
totally silly.
Right.
I had gone to a few rallies, and there were just as many, females as there were male at those rallies. So, and I
Huh.
know a lot of Bernie's platform was very women's rights, and it was very visibly there and announced, and everyone knew that he. It was ridiculous to think that he was a sexist. Absolutely
Right.
ridiculous.
And so going off that, we know that his policy positions and even his record was so much more towards people who didn't vote for him. So
Mhm.
what do you think of that? You think it was the media's fault or people just being stupid or
Yeah,
because if you vote for Clinton over Sanders and you're, let's say, Black Lives Matter, you're not
mhm.
really voting the right person or the best person.
There's a
So,
lot to blame here. I would say that social justice warrior. I'd start there.
mhm.
I would start with, don't get me wrong, don't misinterpret that because I understand civil rights and protecting
Right? No,
people's
yeah,
rights,
yeah.
but they just went out of control,
Hmm.
And secondly, I think Bernie Sanders, as good of a campaigner he is, or a candidate as he is, he didn't take it. He didn't take it full throttle. He should have just gone at her. He should have gone at Clinton. Gone for the throat. The jugular, but he
Hmm.
didn't.
And so, if he were to run in 2020, do you think that he would win?
Hmm. Yeah, again, I don't think he's going to be able to do that if the left doesn't get their act together. We're so splintered right now. I don't care who runs, people are going to be split up.
Right. Um, Going off of that, um, we can now talk about. Well, actually, I have a quick question first. Um,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts towards, generally speaking, to Elizabeth Warren? Kind of
Mm.
before the whole Bernie Sanders thing, because obviously she was nowhere to be found.
I think Elizabeth Warren to me represents an exaggerated version of the better parts of Bernie Sanders. She
Hmm.
doesn't. She talks, but she doesn't really walk. And unfortunately, Bernie, he's at the core, his values are good and his principles are good. But then, when it comes down to actually, you know, being on the front line of, being a tiger, he's not a
Hmm.
tiger. And she's a pussycat. She's a little kitten.
Hmm.
She does a nice meow, but when it comes down to it, there's very little substance,
And
unfortunately.
and how did you feel about Elizabeth Warren not doing shit in the primary to
Very
support or do
well. You had
anything
changed
really?
completely will change my understanding of who she is, my opinion of her, how I perceived her. It was very unfortunate.
And we saw
I felt it
this.
was like a type of betrayal. I felt like at that moment we had lost what would potentially be a very strong proponent on our side, but
And she's very
unfortunately.
popular too. So I mean, she's
Hmm.
quite popular. Probably one of the more popular senators on the Democratic side. And we also know that I don't know if you know this, but she didn't really do anything about. She didn't even say anything. Forget doing anything about the Dakota Access Pipeline. And after it was already done, she sent out a tweet or whatever. But
Yeah,
you could have sent
exactly.
that while it was needed. But
All walk and talk. Yeah. I mean, all talk, no walk, rather.
yeah, exactly. So okay, so from jumping from that to um, some YouTube news channels. So what would you say is your number one, your top, or your favorite?
Hmm. Wow. Um,
Assuming it's left wing, hopefully it's not right wing. As in Ben
well,
Shapiro.
right now, I think I do like secular talk a lot. And I know he's pretty popular at this
Hmm.
time. I really lost a lot of faith in TYT. It's going to take, I'm not sure what it's going to take, quite honestly, for me to regain my trust in them. Um, I felt like pulled the wool over our eyes. You know, we thought that they were the progressive front, and then they
Hmm.
go and completely endorse. You know, the individual had more campaign donations than anybody in history.
Yeah.
Um, Outside of that, even like David Pakman, Tom Hartman really smeared Jill Stein. David
Hmm.
Pakman also smeared Jill Stein. How about yourself? What are some of the ones you see or you see up and coming?
Yeah. It's about the same front. The thing about the news channels is there's not that big of a pool. It's not really increasing that much. So there's only really those few there, and there are those few there who are just growing. But I think that I like secular talk a lot. I like Jimmy Dore's show as well. And
Yes.
then David Pakman's show, I only watch for his little. I only click on the videos that are like comedy videos that have nothing to do with news because I don't like he I'm not saying he's bad or anything. He's just like he's got the script too. I don't even think he goes like improv type of thing. He just reads off a script. And I don't like watching news shows that are straight off a script because I think it's super artificial and I just don't enjoy it because like you're just reading off a paper. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, and then there's the Humanist Report's pretty good and just
Humanist Report.
those
Yeah.
type of those are pretty good. And even the same progressive I think is pretty good too. But she's a little interesting at this point, we'll say to the least.
Well, I'll just say that the problem with the left is they get ticked off from the smallest little quote unquote infraction. You know, it's like, oh, you're not a vegan. I don't want to subscribe to you anymore. Or, you know, you said something bad about Bernie. Well, okay, goodbye.
Hmm.
And the thing about the right is they have a lot of loyalty because they know their core principles and their core values. And the rest of it, they may disagree, kind of like Christianity. They have many different sects, but overall they believe the same message, you know, Jesus Christ and God and all that. And they stand as a front. But with the left, we're just so fickle. And until we change that, you know, just jumping around, you know, I'm going to unsubscribe to this channel. I'm going to jump over here. Well, I don't
Yeah.
like what you said. I'll unsubscribe to you. Or I don't like what you said on Facebook. I'm no longer your friend. You know, how can you get
Yeah.
anywhere with that kind of
Right.
attitude?
Do you by any chance know do you know who Ben Shapiro is?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on his show, if you want to call it that?
Um, I personally think he's hiding behind religion,
Mhm. I
but
agree
he
with
puts
that.
it across as he's secular, but in reality, he's Jewish Orthodox.
Mhm.
He's in the wrong place. He needs to go and what do they call that for the Jewish? It's kind of like be a monk of sorts.
Oh, I'm not even sure, to be honest.
But
And have you
I
seen
mean,
the
he has the
channels?
right, you know, voice his opinion. He has the
Mhm.
right to do all that, but at least tell us the truth here. You know, don't take it over. You know, with idealism. You know, like tell us, okay, this is the reason why I'm doing this because of my religious beliefs. Blah blah blah. I'll have more
Yeah.
respect for him.
And
Um,
then have you seen Steven Crowder? Do you know who that is?
yeah. Mhm.
And what are your thoughts on that channel?
I think he's a little dangerous because he's very charming.
Mhm.
Um, the thing about these guys is they're kind of like I consider them as sort of frat boys, you know,
Mhm.
and they're charming. They come across like very likable and fun, and that's what's kind of missing on the left because we tend to be very, you know, more meticulous and analytical and serious, and it's harder for people to enjoy us. I mean, the funnest one we have right now is really Kyle. You know,
Mhm.
he's more of the lighthearted and people much more approachable and likable, and I think that sells. And that's one of the things about the left is we're so mental, you know,
Right.
we don't put on the charm, and that prevents us from attracting and growing our numbers, I think.
Right. So, to go off of the channels, um, you just recently made a video. I think it was 2 days ago, probably. And it
Huh.
was a response to Jimmy Dore, and you did it with a disclaimer at the beginning. And I've seen some of your videos on um, kind of responding to the Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore conversation.
Mhm.
So I was wondering how it felt to, kind of support him there and then get this massive backlash and just.
Mhm.
And I'll bring up the stat really quick if I can. I need to find it. It is 133 dislikes to 65 likes. So, how do you
Yeah,
feel about the backlash you received?
right. Um,
Is it
I think,
representative of the left?
well, most of my videos get 95%, thumbs up, but
Exactly.
this one was a little a bit of an outlier. It was a little unexpected because I really was hoping that the left would be a little more open-minded and not so reactionary
Hmm.
about. But it's people expressing their disapproval or they disagree. Ultimately, I think that yeah, it is somewhat indicative, unfortunately, of the way the left is. We tend to, again, splitting hairs. Okay, he said something bad about Jimmy, and I do think that we're protective of our own, and particularly since, as you said, there's not a lot of channels. So Jimmy's on the forefront. He's growing. He's probably one of the most fastest growing channels. So for
Huge,
me to put
man.
him
Very
on there
fast.
probably was unwise on my behalf, right?
Hmm.
Um, but that's what it is. My point was I think ultimately it's important for us to be discriminating in how we represent things. We don't want to just extrapolate across the board and conflate things and make them seem the same. What Trump did, his ban is different from what Obama's ban was. But that doesn't mean, therefore, I'm saying we shouldn't hold them both equally accountable. But people, of course, took it that way. Right
Yeah,
now,
they flipped their shit, man. They really flipped their shit. So on the topic of Jimmy Dore, he used to be on TYT, and that's how I found out about him. So on the topic of TYT, because it seems to be like this, because I don't know if you have like maybe friends or brothers or sisters or something of that sort that are generally liberal, but not they don't really push it out or anything. They're not super into politics, but they'll working whatever job, and they'll say that they watch TYT sometimes because they're more of the left wing. I know I have an aunt who does that,
right,
so
right,
she was like, "Oh, I watch TYT sometimes." Like, "Oh wow, like I wish you didn't because that sucks." So it's like, how do you
yeah,
feel about that? Them being the representative of progressives and people on the left and supposed to be like, oh yeah, we're the guys supporting you. And then there's Jordan Sheridan who they hire and he's doing like real work and he's
right,
like saying Russian hacking is bullshit. He's saying there's no evidence. He's pointing it out. And Cenk Uygur, he literally posted a video that he streamed saying this is how they hacked it, and he said nothing about evidence. So how does that work? It's just so it doesn't make sense. And then the people on there, it's almost like you find all of the social justice warriors on Twitter and you just hire them all to be your pundits. I mean,
right.
just what do you make of that?
Wow. I make of it that Sunday maybe, but I think of myself 2 or 3 years ago, where I was so loyal to TYT and I was kind of in the TYT bubble, could do no wrong. And, um, Bernie Sanders obviously was a major eye opener for everyone,
Hmm.
awakened a lot. And we have so much, no matter what does from this point, minus murdering someone like Trump
Yeah.
would say, um, I think we always will owe him a debt of gratitude.
Hmm.
He's a figure to always be remembered and revered. But I don't know. That's the magical question, isn't it? How do you get to that group and get them to see their own behavior? At this point, that's the big question. Do you have any comments on that?
Um. For TYT during the primaries, I thought that I would like that was the because for my TYT stint, it was pretty short
Hmm.
because as I started getting into news, especially obviously on YouTube, I found them as probably I found them as the first
Hmm.
source.
Right.
But quickly and luckily, I found Secular Talks videos,
Mm-hmm.
and I pretty much unsubscribed to the Young Turks really quickly
Oh wow! Wow.
because I kind like it was maybe like a month or max or a few weeks or something like that,
Hmm.
and because I like the substantive thing, and I don't know what it is about it. Secular Talk Show is just changes your mind on a lot, and it's really good at convincing. But the Young
Hmm.
Turks, half of their videos are about Kanye West or Kim
Right,
Kardashian
right,
and stuff like that. And it'll be some of the videos have nothing to do with politics, and then the
right.
pundits just suck. Like, dear God, like the only one that I
Yeah,
can really stand is Jank, and then um, Ben Mankiewicz is okay, but he's superbly centrist.
right.
And then Jimmy Dore obviously was definitely my favorite, but he has blossomed into his own thing, and thank God he's gone to the right side. Um, but it's just I feel like it's very cringe to watch. I don't really like it. So during the primary, I would actually like for the first time in a long time like watching their videos about Bernie Sanders because I always felt like this environment where I could go and there's like, you know, people who are Bernie Sanders supporters and it'd be great. And I watched a few. I remember watching the Iowa primary live stream that they had. And it was
Mhm.
like it came down to a point 0.2 difference. So it
Right.
was like it was a great experience. But ever since, I really haven't watched their videos anymore because it's honestly just horrible. It's just not good.
Yeah.
So I'd
No,
like
I
to
agree.
stick with the better channels. But we need more people. Like, I
Um,
think the Humanist Report is pretty good too. But
mhm.
there just needs to be more channels.
Yeah, there does, but somehow we need to get the message out there about cohesion, a coalition of force, and try to get people not to be so sensitive about splitting hairs. You know, that's going to prevent us from having any kind of movement.
Hmm.
Uh, so, growing the channels that we have, your channel, um, and Sane Progressive,
Hmm.
Humanist Report, all of these channels. We just have Tim Black.
Hmm. He
They're
has a good
growing,
channel as
but
well.
slowly. They're
And
growing, but slowly.
also, it
I
seems
think
to be that just a quick question. Um, like for the channels, it seems more like there's not really like the only time we get these separate channels is either someone being superbly just taking the initiative and really going out to really work really hard, or it's like someone just branches out from the Young Turks and becomes another person, like Jimmy Dore, for example, or Dave Rubin or something like that. Does there need to be more of like a kind of like a support to actually push the because like I've always found that a little bit hypocritical, and before the whole Justice Democrats thing I really that was the one criticism point I had of Kyle Klinsky, and I was like, okay, you're pushing this out but on your show you've endorsed zero congressional candidates and you're talking about how there's no Democrats taking office. Well, like, yeah, it's not going to be there if you're not helping them and nobody's helping them. Obviously with the Justice Democrats thing, but that also kind of transfers to more channels. Do you feel like sometimes having more views or whatever it may be that, oh, I worked hard for this, so you have to work your ass off too?
mm,
Do you think it may be a little detrimental to maybe furthering out on YouTube or maybe getting onto TV or radio talk shows, whatever it may be? Do you think that's a little detrimental or somewhat hypocritical, I guess you could say? Not exactly, but.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. They do monopolize. TYT monopolizes the left when it
Yeah.
comes to social media, um, and it is right because there was a little bit of suspicion for myself in that it felt there was a time, particularly in the latter part of the primaries, where I was wondering, I wonder if Cenk is doing this purposely, you know, kind of throwing crumbs out at progressives, but the core is all about centrist Democrat. So, you know, throw out a little bit of um, what's his name that goes out to Dakota Access. I can't remember his name
Jordan
now.
Sheridan.
Jordan, and Emma, and you know, Person comes over here and get secular talk to, you know, do his piece, and David Packman do his piece. But at the core, you know, we're the captain of the ship, and the ship's going this way, you know, and you guys are going to kind of come along no matter what the outcome. That has crossed my mind, and you're right. Then there's people like you, people like me, people like Tim Black and Sane Progressive and Cabin Talk, and you know, we're out here, but you know, where do we go if it's not the TYT? How do we formulate something where our voice can be big?
Exactly. And
Um,
it's almost like they go out of their way to say, if you're not TYT, we don't hire you. it's almost like a middle finger to your face, like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to do all this on your own. Like we have this huge empire, we have the easiest opportunity to put one thing up and just pretty much explode your audience. But
Yeah.
instead, we're just gonna say, no, either we hire you or you're on your own. So
They haven't done any promotion
they haven't
of
done
all these other.
shit. They haven't done
Yeah.
jack. So that's
They,
always quite annoying as well. Um,
so in response to that, I do think that what you're doing here today is a good example of what we need to keep doing and
mhm.
reaching out to each other and stop splitting hairs. We're going to have disagreements. We're going to have disagreements with Debbie. We're going to have
Right.
disagreements with them, but
Mhm.
ultimately at the core, we all share the same values. So I think that this is a beginning. What you're doing is great. So, re, we need to keep connecting the dots until finally we get some kind of maybe. I personally had this idea where we would meet once a week and we would have a forum of progressive channel hosts, and people would have it would be live streamed and people could put in their questions and we can put out questions and get people's
That would be ideal, but
feedback,
some people just think that they're just, too big for
and we help
others.
each other grow,
Yeah.
and say, if you're subscribed to my channel, go to Josh's channel, and I'll say, if I'm going to put this on my channel, and I'm going to
Right.
say, go to Progressive Voice
Mhm.
and sign up there, so we
Right.
can help
And
grow,
on that
because
topic,
we need
right.
the. It's not about who has the biggest channel. It's about how much of a voice do we have, and the more of us out there, with a voice, the bigger a voice we'll have.
Right. And on that topic, I just wanted to bring up a little bit that there is huge, and I don't even know if Debbie really says she's on the left anymore or whatever it is, because she's just like totally, she's personally like intentionally disconnecting.
Well, for me, what Debbie represents is someone who is cathartic, and she represents sort of that archetype, and I
Hmm.
think it's necessary. And I think that what she does is Debbie's kind of the one step ahead emotively than the
Hmm.
rest of us, and she's basically there for us to go to feel all the things, express all the things that we all really feel deep inside, all the anger, all the upset, and that's fine, And we need to hear that, and we need that fire. I think she's the match. And as far as whether she's this, that, or the other, at the core, if you know Debbie, she's on the same page as we are when it comes to single payer healthcare, Dakota Access Pipeline, getting out of the Middle East, all those things, education, money out of politics. Those are the core things, and that's what I'm trying to say. Is we need to stop beating each other up and start coming together, just like you're reaching out to me today,
Right.
connecting the dots.
And on that topic, because I don't know if you saw, but I had made a video that was addressing the what the Saint Progressive had said about the Justice Democrats, and I had some subscribers who were from her channel, and I lost like
Mm-hmm.
probably around like 30, maybe 40 subscribers just from that video. So
Mm-hmm.
it might play more to your point, of course, again about how there's so much like we're gonna subscribe to this, and if you don't say this or you say this, and I didn't even go out like she did in her videos. I was just like, I respectfully disagree because I hear you out, but also it's like this is our best option here. So,
Mm-hmm.
but they still just flipped their shit. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
They were so angry, they just dipped out. So,
Right. I understand. And same kind of the reaction I got when I had just provided my opinion for Jimmy Dore,
mm-hmm,
and we all need to be able to take on criticism and be able to handle that criticism, and that includes the audience members, because we have a diversity of opinions, but yet at the core, that's where we need to focus, and
mm-hmm,
and not. It's okay, if you need to thumbs down, do it, because I'm not hurt by that,
mm-hmm,
because I'm more concerned than I am hurt,
right,
because I'm concerned. Okay, what does that mean about how much loyalty we have to the progressive movement, and to each other? Because if you go to channels like Steve Chowder or what's his name again?
it's
Steve Cowder?
Crowder.
Crowder. There you go. Sorry.
A lot of people make fun of him by
If
saying
you say
Chowder.
one thing bad about him, his they would eat you alive.
Mm-hmm,
And they're not going to cross the line, and he's not going to go. And if he says something about another channel, like Paul Watson, for example, they're not going to come. All those people are not going to come over and eat, his channel alive.
Mm-hmm.
They support each other, very loyal to each other. But if you have somebody from the left going in there, they will eat you.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody the right goes into their channel, they can say what they want, and they respect their opinion. So that's how it works. And we have to do the same on the left, because if we don't, we're just going to shred each other, and then it's going to end up being nothing. So we have to
Right.
be able to take on criticism and not be like so perfectionistic and split it, like I said, splitting hairs, and then we have no cohesion.
Okay, so to kind of recap a little bit here, um, in terms of or relating to where do we go from here,
Mm.
um, so there's the Green Party and then there's the Justice Democrats, which is wildly popular at this point. Um, how do you say we allocate focus? Because I know that Mike over at Humanist Report had made a video about the Justice Democrats, and he was talking about how he's happy about it, but he's also still going to try and grow the Green Party. So is that really realistic? Is that how people should allocate their time, and how should they go about the whole? Because the Justice Democrats provides a whole another platform, if you will, against pretty much everything that's going right now, which is the Green Party. Because you can't really be the Green Party and a Justice Democrat, because one, you have to be registered to the other, and two, it's just a lot of people love identity politics, so they will refuse to do so. But where do we go from here?
As I said, I've been saying time and time again, and I'm hoping this gets louder and louder, is that the only way we're going to survive is if we get ranked choice voting.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are not going to change their loyalties. Can't get them to change it. Some people might, but it'll be on their own account because they see something they don't like. But you trying to persuade them why they should vote for Bernie versus why they should vote for Stein, they're going to just take that as a personal attack. So the way to do it, I personally is to you can do supporting both. There's no reason why you can't allow things to transpire. We're still only 2 weeks into a Trump presidency, so it's premature for us to say, oh, we should completely put everything behind the Justice Democrats or all behind the Green Party. They have to show us over the next year what they're going to give us. What are the goods here? If the Justice Democrat really gets big, okay, there we go. Everybody has to make their decision. But ultimately, I believe that it needs to be less about the party and more about the candidate. We can't be splitting our vote. If it comes down to you have a Green Party candidate and you have a Democratic candidate running for a Senate in your state, and we've got to create a forum by where we 100%. Everybody comes to the table and says, okay, which of these two are we going to get behind?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's going to be demolition time for the
Right.
Democrats in 2018. It has to be that we have. That's what I think we really need to agree on. Not whether or not it's just the Justice Democrats or the Green Party, but it needs to be that, okay, let's look at which of these two candidates is the best of the two and vote for that candidate.
Okay.
Party, if it's a Democrat candidate, go get behind it. If you're a Democrat and it's a Green Party candidate, we all get behind that one.
Uh-huh.
That's how we have to go. Otherwise, we don't stand a chance.
Right.
That's my. What are your thoughts?
Um. No. Yeah. I totally agree. Personally, obviously, again, I do support third party voting, but I don't like. I don't like. Obviously, the platform of the Green Party is great, but I don't think that. Obviously, there's a systemic, massive biases against them. But I also don't think that they've really done a good job of pushing their narrative and how to get out there. Um, and I think that the Justice Democrats is a great movement in my opinion. It is definitely the best we have right now. It's a great way to get some motivation, some energy running through right now, and I'm definitely interested to see what happens. I want to see, and what I was just gonna ask you is, how successful do you think the Justice Democrats will be in? Because what their real goal right now is congressional members and the district. So how successful do you think the Justice Democrats will be in electing progressive people that will take out the corporate guys in the House and the Senate?
If they're continue on the track they're on, I think they'll be fairly successful because right now they already have almost 300,000 people that have signed on, and it's only been about 8 days. They've already amassed. Oh, I'm sorry. They have about 30,000, and they've amassed about $350,000 just
Mm-hmm.
in 7 or 8 days. So on that trajectory, there's no reason for them not to, reach tens and 20 to 30, $40 million within a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Okay,
think it's
on
all a matter
that,
of how they use that money.
right, and on that, that would be great for, let's say, like a presidential election. But how do you think it'll specifically allocate to winning congressional districts in terms of House and Senate? Because, for example, I don't know, some district maybe is absolutely unaffected by Justice Democrats because there is no progressive constituency, or they're just not able to tap into it enough. Do you think it's realistic or possible, or that they will succeed in getting districts to win representative seats? Because I think the dynamic is a lot different, and we found that out with the Tim Canova Wasserman Schultz primary.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that district was massively pro-Israel, but it's just an example to say that the sample sizes in at the federal level for presidency is huge, right? Everyone, but for just a district, it may be a lot different, right? So, how successful do you think they'll be? And plus, is it realistic for? I mean, they must have a really good vetting process, and they must be really good at getting people prepared. Because is Bob or Jim from whatever place in whatever district really going to be able to win? Is my question, and I'm interested to see how effective it's going to be, and that's what I'm wondering.
Well, have you heard of the brand new Congress?
Yeah, I have.
And then, of course, the Our Revolution, Bernie Sanders, some
Mhm.
of his team is part of Justice Democrats.
Mhm.
So slowly but surely, now those three organizations are working together.
Right.
So there's a lot of power there. And I think it's going to come down to grassroots in terms of the people getting behind it and getting out there and doing the footwork, which means getting people to sign up to vote that otherwise wouldn't vote or has never voted before. You have to remember that in 2 years, people your age
Mhm.
are going to be able to vote. I think what
Right.
you're
Yeah.
17.
I'm 60. Yeah, I'll be able to vote in 2 years, so the next mid election.
So it's going to be about working with people. I don't even know if what the laws are on working at high school level and getting people ready to vote or
Mhm.
being able to register them in various states. But we have to start strategizing. It can't just be Kyle puts up a web page and that's it.
Mhm.
It's not going to go anywhere. It needs to be all right. Give us instructions. Tell us what we need to do. How are we doing this strategically,
Right,
tactically?
and to actually that brings up an interesting point too, because person the person who was the Senate Minority Leader previously for the Democrats, Harry Reid, he was scorching the DNC because he was saying that they weren't doing anything in terms of getting actual grassroots movement or doing anything really to get them voted in. And he said he had to create everything in Nevada himself. So, do you think the Justice Democrats as well will be able to do that? And do you think Keith Ellison? Because I do think Ellison's going to win the DNC chair. I'm not even sure who votes for the DNC chair, but I would assume he's going to win because um, I forget the other guy's name. The guy who dropped out, he was a big corporate guy. I forget his name, but what do you think? Do you think that they'll be able to make an
Yeah.
effective system, like an actual where there's actually movements within all the states to get these congressional candidates?
Well, this is where I have to agree with Mike. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket
Mm-hmm.
because this isn't our organization. The Justice Democrats is, founded by Kyle and Cenk.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the leaders, they're the managers. They've got to pull things together, and we can't know what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the only way we're going to influence them is if we make pushback and we say, listen, if we're going to be part of this, this is our demands. You know, how do we do that? I'm not sure. We have to create some kind of list of expectations from them,
Right.
um, or we just kind of sit back and hopefully they'll start to give us more instructions. On the ground. How do we get the troops out? Otherwise, it's going to be what Mike is suggesting, and that's continuing to work with Green Party and seeing what we can do to grow that.
So,
It's going to have to be simultaneously because if you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, that's not a good move.
right, no doubt. And I was wondering, because building off of that too. So there are like former Bernie campaign managers who are there too, apparently. And
Mhm.
because it seems like we don't really have direct contact with them, seemingly, and we know that Kyle and Jenk aren't really reaching out to anyone.
Mm,
And even the Justice Democrats, they followed me on Twitter. I tried direct messaging them. I got no reply. So I don't know what's up with that, but it
right,
already doesn't seem like something that's superbly
right.
transparent.
And
And
let me
yeah,
tell
they
you,
can tweet out the scripted tweets and all, but when are they really going to be of the people? Because yeah, the money is there, but it's like, is it the people's agenda, or is it what they think is the people's agenda and the progressive elitist, if you will,
okay.
in their
Well, what we
agenda?
have to do, I think you have a website, right? It's
hmm
Progressive Army or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's not my website, but I'm a writer over there. Yeah,
Oh, it's not your website. Okay.
yeah.
I don't know how much influence you have, but or how much of that you can take up, but this is where doing some kind of website, because YouTube channels are great, but it only allows so much space
hmm
to put information. Written form is often very effective, so it gives people a place to go. If we can start to write out demands, of okay, this is what we demand from the Justice Democrats.
hmm
We don't want to be identified with social justice warriors. Not saying they can't be part of it, but they can't be making a ruckus and destroy this opportunity for us. We need some strategy here. And I know this is just the beginning for them, but if say in 2 or 3 months, maybe a timetable, this is what we're wanting, and then we can send it over to Kyle. And
hmm
if they get enough people to support that, because there needs to be something organized. You're right about that, and it needs to be, not just a website saying, oh, here's a platform and this is all the things we stand for, and we're going to demand that whoever's running for Congress do this. Okay, that's great. I may as well just throw up a list of shopping list at the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me how you're going to get to the grocery store. Tell me, how much money is in your pocket. What are you going to do with the food when you get home? Things like that. How's this going to work? How are you going to accommodate all the guests? So yeah, you're right. So that's what I would say is it's gonna, the thing is, people like Debbie, people like you, people like me, people like Tim, people like H.A. Goodman,
hmm
we have to be the ones to do the work.
hmm
We're the front, we are the alternative to the alternative media for the progressive side.
Which is sad
And
that that exists.
and so what I'm saying to you is, I've already started a little bit of a platform,
hmm
more like a charter for the Progressive Party, my own idea of the Progressive Party. You and I can collaborate on that. I
hmm
can send it to you. You can tell me what your thoughts are. You can add your own thoughts in. This
hmm
is just the beginning. It's going to take months. I'm busy. I'm sure you're busy.
hmm
Um, that's what it's going to take. And so, just the fact you're asking this question is the beginning of something. So that means maybe some of the things I brought up. Maybe you use your website to put down these are the demands we want from the Justice Democrat.
hmm
We need this from you, because we're not just going to blindly go in like we did with this last election.
Right. So, to kind of cap
What are
everything
your thoughts?
off, well, okay, so yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think that I may be speculating a little too much since it's just the beginning, but
Mhm.
I think it's better to be a skeptic right now because it'll make more demands while they are trying to garner support,
Right.
and while I'm in support of it, I'm a little bit skeptical as to what they're gonna do because yeah, you're right. Just throwing up a web page and then just writing up a platform isn't really going to convince me that you're gonna be the new next revolution to take over Congress with progressives and then eventually have a progressive president. that's not really exactly what's going to happen. I think there should be much more nuance and more. There needs to be more public contribution, and it shouldn't just be dollars. It shouldn't just be people fund
Mhm.
it, but also it should be that people contribute to the ideas, how you're going to do it, and what you're going to do. Because currently, I mean, yeah, Cenk Uygur and Kyle did found it, and I'm sure there's someone running their Twitter handle. But at the end of the day, these guys both are doing their own shows, and
Right,
I
they're
mean,
busy.
believe it or not, they're making some decent money off that too. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's not directly of the people at this point, and there needs to be more collaboration between the two for me to really be like, okay, this is the perfect movement. Because again, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. So I
Mhm.
think it's great and all, but there's a little more to add to it.
Well, is a bit premature. So I would allow them, to say maybe April, May, to see if they have something more they're going to offer about how we're going to get there.
Hmm.
And then if they don't, I think it's time to start making some demands, particularly when you're going to get 1,200,000 people sponsoring that, and they're going to start shifting the weight over in their direction. It could just be a big, free for all, unorganized, and go nowhere. And then we're going to lose out because that's going to be like a vacuum sucking all the power away.
Hmm.
Uh, then at that point, I think it's time to start making some demands and saying, "Listen, this is you need to start giving some strategy here. What's this all about? How are we going to get there?"
Hmm.
And short of that, in the meantime, I think like what Mike suggests, continue to collaborate with your local Green Party. Continue to stay in tune with Jill Stein. She seems to be the front person still.
Hmm.
Um, Try to invite them on, get their perspective on it. I've reached out to them. They've yet to, David, he did message me back once. He was unable to. He was in the middle of the recount. So just getting some of these voices on the alternative progressive movement side.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
So short of that, it's kind of out of our hands. We're both small. You have 2,000. I have 5,000. Saying progressive is one of the bigger ones, but she's disillusioned to a great extent. And
Hmm.
Tim Black's there. He's great,
Hmm.
but he's not as interested in the behind the scenes. He's more interested in getting up front. Like where's
Which
this
is
going?
fine. Yeah, we do need something like that. He is probably better of a kind of message sender and kind of advertising. I think he is pretty good at that as well. So yeah, he's doing a good job too, and he's pretty big as well. Actually, his show and his is pretty big, and Debbie's probably the biggest in our kind of area.
Influential. Yeah.
Yeah, and there just needs to be more. And I'm going to save a lot of my criticism for now. But if we're like 3 4 months in and then we don't have like anything to show for it, I'm
Mhm.
going to start questioning things. And there's already, believe it or not, there is a lot of people who are just as Democrats, like massive grassroots supporters, and there are people on Twitter who just already have the profile picture, they have the website in their bio, they have the name and somewhere and all that stuff. So there's it's a big network, and we'll see what happens. So we have to be a little worrisome about some random backlash from them as well, per
Right.
se. So
Well, I think if they can't handle the criticism, they can't handle these. I think what's justifiable questions, then it doesn't say much about them really. So that's what I'm saying. All of us need to, really not be so sensitive. It reminds me again about how politically correct we have to be on the left and walking on eggshells.
yeah,
Just
no, it's terrible.
give all that up. People need to stop on the left. We need to stop being so sensitive. We need to get
Okay,
some cohesion.
here's gonna be one of the last few questions here. Here's something I just popped in mind. So 2018, all representatives who have served 2 terms are gonna be up, or 2 years are gonna be up for, they have to be opposed. Now, do you think that the Justice Democrats will succeed in getting at least one Congress member into office? And if they don't, what will your response be? And obviously the Senate as well, but that's a lot tougher to win than representative.
I actually think that they do have a good chance of at least getting one.
Mhm.
I do. I say that because they're kind of the establishment of the alternative media on the progressive side. So
Mhm.
they have connections. Even Howard Dean mentioned the Justice Democrats
Right.
on MSNBC.
Hmm.
I believe it's there this morning.
Oh,
So
really?
they're already visible, on the radar.
Right.
They-
And there's lots of articles out there and stuff. So,
But if they don't,
if they don't, what will your response be in 2018 if they fail to get any seats and maybe one seat? Because there's a lot of representatives. How many is it? Is it like 400 something?
435, I believe.
Okay, so 435. Even if they get one person in there, that's one out of 435. What do you think will be a sufficient and more importantly satisfying number for numbers of Justice Democrats making it into the Congress?
I think it's relative. If the Green Party is able to get two or three, then
Hmm.
the one at that point, I think you just continue to do what you're doing. It's working. But on the other hand, if the Green Party gets zero and they get one, I think it's still okay because it means it's a role model to follow. We just
Hmm.
use the same formula. What worked on that one candidate? Why did it work? Use that same formula. On the other hand, if they don't get any,
If they get
um,
zero, what will your response be? If they get zero people or even one,
mhm.
because one isn't really that much
I
out of
think
435, they're not going to
yeah,
have that much sway in the votes.
they're going to have to set aside their ego and be ready for an onslaught of criticism, and they're going to have to relinquish, give up the torch
Hmm.
to someone else, and they're going to have to let someone else take it over. That's would be my suggestion.
And what if they refuse to do so? What is the next point? Because then you have the alternative media, but then you have the establishment of the
I
alternative
think you're going
media
to
with
find
the
a lot of
power.
people will be disenchanted, and they're going to lose a lot of support. They're going to flatten out because this is going to be like third time burnt. Um, and Green Party, on the other hand, even if they don't get any, that is not really a loss. They're pretty much where they were.
Hmm.
At
Right.
that point, I think that probably going to see a lot of people either give up on voting altogether, um, or and the remaining will probably decide to go over to third parties.
And then where does it
That's
go from there?
a lot depends on what you do in that year
Because
and a half.
it almost seems hopeless in some certain scenarios, right? Because let's say you get zero or one congressional member from this, and then
Mhm.
you have just corporate Democrats that don't really give a shit. I mean, do people just forget, lose hope, and then the older generation dies off, but half of the young generation isn't even voting anymore? I mean, just what happens in that scenario?
We just keep going deeper into a
Okay,
Trump type.
here let me rephrase that question. Actually, let's say they get zero or one congressional representatives um, in 2 years. Um, at what point do you say just stop for the Justice
Mhm.
Democrats?
Mhm.
And like, at what point do you think people just say, "Screw it, I'm done, I'm giving up"?
If they get one, I think it's worthwhile because that means, again, I think it gives us a role model to follow.
Hmm.
They don't get any. I think that's it. I don't see a point.
Hmm.
We've invested hundreds and tens and millions of dollars into this. It's done nothing. It's a failure.
And
Um,
also, more on the Justice Democrats is that, and I kind of touched on this, but we didn't really get into detail on this, but they claim to have this certain vetting process, and I'm not necessarily doubting it because sure they have previous Bernie Sanders campaign managers, but what are they going to do in order to make Bob in Alabama or Bob in New York or Jim in California or whoever it is be able to win their district? What are they going to do? Are they going to personally give them a list and send out someone to help them or is that person going to have to go out and picket sign by himself and have to do that? Or I just don't, I'm not 100% sure on the process because it sounds all fine and dandy, like, oh yeah, we're going to raise all this money, we're going to have all these people, and we're going to make sure they're vetted. But it's like, yeah, but what exactly are you doing? That's my
yeah.
question.
This is what I can't predict what they'll do, but I know what I would do in this instance. If I had millions of dollars at my disposal,
Hmm.
I would organize a big festival. And
Not a bad
I
idea.
would organize a bunch of artists that would be playing something like a Woodstock event.
Mhm.
Uh, would attract a lot of young people, middle-aged people,
Mhm.
that remembers Woodstock, and just get them to remember that energy we had in the '60s. And then people start signing on. Have voter booths, and all kinds of banners that talk about, we demand you to get out of the Middle East or whatever. Just a big, giant, massive, energetic festival. And you do that in each state. You kind of move around, and you're kind of a moving circuit. And then that's the way to do it. That's the only way you can do it. That's the way you do a movement. It's not this, put up a website and this is our platform. The platform is pretty much our revolutions platform. I mean,
It is, yeah, it's
it's
the
just,
same thing.
and it's just duplications. Everybody, whether it's Progressive Independent Party, whether it's Socialist Party, whether it's, they're just duplications of one another. That's all they are. They're cut and paste. Change around a little words here and there, but it's, you have to start there, obviously, but we need more than that. We need something that tells us, okay, this is what we're going to be doing.
Mhm.
But again, it's only been a week, so you just have to give us. We have to give it time. We have to be patient. I know a lot of us are antsy right now because of what's happened with the new nomination for the court and all the executive orders coming down. But we saw this coming. I never doubted for a second that Trump was going to do what he said he's going to do. But I think this is necessary. I think it's necessary that this happen.
So, another thing on the election, because it's amazing really what happened, because in my mind, I had thought that the demographic had switched so much, or not even necessarily switched so much, but I thought that with the end of the Bush years, I thought that there wasn't going to be a Republican elected for a long time, like a really long time, like a good amount, like maybe two more presidents or something like that. But one got picked right now. So what do you make of that? Because a majority, there are more people who are not conservatives than there are people who are conservatives. So I mean, what do you make
Democratic
of
Party.
that?
Democratic Party. They betrayed us.
Hmm.
That's the bottom line. And you can try to make it whatever you want, but that's what it is. They've morphed into the Republican Party,
Hmm.
um, and in some ways they're worse because they come across, in sheep's clothing, but they're wolves, and they are duplicates of the Republican Party. They've been exposed. WikiLeaks, Snowden, now alternative media, and also on top, in addition to that, the alt right has an opportunity with the Tea Party, and they've been organizing over the past 4 to 6 years,
Hmm.
and they've really been working at it. Channels like Steve Crowder, he has been having to grow and get out there. It took him 4 or 5 years to get to his numbers. So 6 years ago he was where we are today.
Hmm.
We are pretty much a reflection of where the right was back when they lost under Bush, and everybody was so disenchanted with Bush, and now it's everybody's disenchanted with Obama and the Clintons. So that's what
So
you have.
okay, so with the Justice Democrats, and we know that there was massive voter fraud and more importantly voter suppression within the Democratic primaries itself, because they would have there were lots of stories about this that the mainstream media didn't really want to play. And it
Mm-hmm.
was that in states like California and I think Arizona and even the caucus states, it is that they would have like one polling place for a massive amount of people, and it
Yeah.
would purposely be in a Bernie majority place. And then they would also have like in the caucuses, they would have the Hillary people who are at the head of it would just until they would not start and open the door until the Bernie Sanders supporters left. So I mean, just all of this, like, how do we then infiltrate and change that so make sure that we can actually get the people in that we need to get in? Because if it weren't for all the DNC rigging, Bernie Sanders might have had a chance.
Mm-hmm. We have to do outreach, and the alternative media has to grow.
Hmm.
Um, People have, that's where I go back to where we have to stop splitting hairs and say, well, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because you said, that I don't know, cats don't meow.
Hmm.
So I'm done with you. That kind of attitude is not going to get us anywhere. So people have got to reach out and say, hey, can you subscribe to my channel? Or I heard about this channel. I want you to subscribe to it, so that we have a forum, and then we can be there to speak on behalf of those that are subscribed to our channel.
Mm-hmm.
And then we voice through them. We can be a medium of their voice. But we don't have that kind of voice, other than TYT. They dominate, and they're not trustworthy. They're bouncing around all over the place. So we don't really know what we're seeing here.
And how can we grow the channels that need to be grown? What
Mm-hmm.
what what do you think are the best strategies to do so? Because
That's a tough
TYT's
one.
definitely gotten it, but I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, Kyle over at Secular Talk, he would upload videos with like minimal views, and he was like out of college. Well, he was in college, and just it took him
Mm-hmm.
years to even get on the map. So
It's not something that happens overnight.
at all, not at
A lot
all.
of it came aboard because of Bernie Sanders.
Hmm.
He lit a flame for a lot of us, felt the burn. But how do you go from here? You're right. It's going to take time. It's even if you've got 1,000 subscribers or 2,000, 3,000, you're doing good.
Hmm.
If you've been around for about a year or so, year and a half, that's pretty typical for anybody that's ultimately going to be on the track to success, as long as they keep it up. But it's not going to be a year. It's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
It's gonna be a long time.
That's how, unfortunately. And the only other way is if you're getting outside support. One example is that I did a video on H.A. Goodman. I said in defense of him, I think it
Hmm.
was TYT uh,
Yeah,
network
I've seen that
that had,
video. Hmm.
and then in turn, H.A. Goodman had something positive to say about my channel, and my numbers went up. They spiked.
Hmm.
You see, that's what we have to do. We have to get out there and speak well of each other rather than speaking down. But that does not mean that we can't be critical of each other. And we may have some disagreements. That doesn't mean that, okay, well, H.A. Goodman said something bad about Josh at, New Progressive Voice. You know what? I don't want to have anything to do with H.A. Goodman anymore. That kind of attitude is not going to get us there. We all have to be in this together and remember our core values. That's my take on it. What are your thoughts?
Um, yeah, on that I agree too, and I think that it takes a ridiculous amount of initiative to really be motivated and inspired to really like work really hard at this, to go out there, because it's really hard. It's very hard. So it's and also there's again the kind of forced isolation by the juggernaut TYT, and then also other channels as well. So it's a rough situation, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel somewhere, and you have to take wins where you can find them in terms of videos and whatnot. But yeah, it's just things like that. So I'm gonna personally try to do my best and see how long I can keep this up, and I'll be able
You
to see
don't
if I
talk
can
like
do it for a
that.
while.
Well, you need to stay on it because,
Mm,
you know, there's not a lot of people like you. You're a rare breed. It's you. Like I said, it's a handful of people. Tim Black, they've had to do it for years. Look how many years
I
it took
know,
Tim to get where he is.
right?
And you're fortunate because you're 16. So
Exactly. Yeah.
but you've got a lot of things on your table. Trying to get into college and all that stuff. So I know you're going to be really busy. But I think Kyle did it, didn't he? So you can certainly do it.
I
Just
I
all a matter of
wish
how
I
important this is
wish
to you.
that, because I have like I had sent Kyle an email. I was like, hey, I got a subscription to your channel, and I was like, oh, I was wondering if you could, I think it said something of like the nature of, oh, can you check out my channel or something like that, or give me some tips. More is what I like to say, because I'd like to improve. And he sent her like a reply that was like, oh, you're already getting some good numbers, and he said like keep grinding and you'll make it. And it's like, like that's all you got, like. There was
Um,
so it's, I don't know, it's interesting,
Sahil,
this
is it Sahil?
mentality,
Am I
man.
saying that correctly?
It's
Is it
Sahil.
Sahil? Sahil.
Yeah.
Um, People are very smart, and they can sense when they see something, and you know, I didn't know about you until you reached out to me. And when I watched your first couple of videos, I could definitely tell you have it. You have that something. You, I personally support you. Keep going at it. And I think he said the right thing. You're you're ahead of the curve. You know what you're doing. I think you're in a lot of cases. I listen to quite a few of your videos. A lot of cases, you're more informed than I am on some things. So you've got the advantage of being quite young, yeah, well, very young actually. So you have that advantage, and you're coming out of the gate, flying. So
Right.
I hope you don't give up.
Yeah, I'll try not to. We'll see how it goes.
Don't let
Um,
the don't let the down thumbs discourage you. This is
no, yeah,
a
it's not
big.
even the down thumbs. Those really only happen on like controversial videos, and
Mhm.
those are I don't really get bothered by that. It's just tough to keep going with low numbers. Period. Basically. So that's kind of what it
Your
is.
numbers, your numbers are great. Now you have to take it in terms of percentage of subscribers you have and how many views you're getting. I mean,
Mm,
right now you have about 2,300 subscribers. You're getting like 300 views for each video. I mean,
mm.
that's massive. That's
Yeah,
massive.
it's
I mean,
alright. It's alright.
imagine if you were at the size of Cal, who has over 400,000 views. I mean, right now you're getting in the neighborhood of 10, 15%. Your videos, each of your videos be up there in like 40, 50,000 plus. So you have to keep that in perspective.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're getting the 200 to 100 range. You're doing awesome.
Right.
You got a following. You got people that are loyal to you.
Right. Right. Right.
So
So yeah, there's going to be a big journey, and I appreciate you coming to have a talk, and I hope you did enjoy it. And if you guys, of course, go subscribe to his channel. Link will be in the description. And here's the final question to you, and it is
okay,
that: will Donald Trump win re-election in 2020? Should he run?
yeah. Right now, with the way things are, I think there's about 80% chance that he would run and he would win.
Mhm.
Because the left is just so in disarray at this point that uh, the only hope we have here is if Bernie Sanders runs,
Mhm.
then the odds will start to be more like 50-50.
Mhm.
But outside of Bernie Sanders, I think it's pretty much a done deal that Trump is going to be 8 years,
Okay.
uh, unless he just really messes up, which I wouldn't put it past him in a major way. But he does also have a lot of insiders that can kind of keep him just just tightly fit enough where he can get away with a lot through those 8 years. And he's going to get better, obviously, as he goes along. He's going to be more experienced, more seasoned. It's going to make him better at, not doing something drastic to undermine his campaign
Mhm.
or his organization. So, um, but at this point, it is in his favor to win, I think, at least by 70, 80%,
Mhm.
unless Bernie runs.
Right. Do you
So
have
let's
any?
hope that happens.
Right. No doubt. Do you have anything last things to say for the show?
No, I appreciate you bringing me on here, and I just hope that we can continue to do things like this, reach out to each other, form our own kind of circle, and grow that.
Mhm.
And like I said, you're invited to help me write up the progressive platform. If you
Right.
want to take a look at it and discuss it, and I can start sending you copies. And if you want to start working on it with me, collaborating, that would be great.
Right. Sounds awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on here. And make sure you guys go subscribe to his channel.